In this video, I will discuss about the contribution margin variance analysis. Let us first define contribution margin variance. It is the difference between the actual contribution margin per unit and the budgeted contribution per unit multiplied by the actual number of units sold. If the actual contribution margin is greater than the budgeted contribution margin per unit, a variance is favorable. Otherwise, it is unfavorable. Now, we are going to analyze the contribution margin variance. So, we have given here a sample problem, the comparative partial income statement data of Crispy Corporation in 2011 and 2012. In the problem, we will analyze the contribution margin variance using the two-way analysis. To illustrate, using the two-way analysis, first, we'll get the sales variances. To get the sales variances, we will just simply deduct the sales price variance and the sales quantity variance. To get the sales price variance, multiply the difference in the unit sales price in 2011 and 2012 by the units sold in 2012. So, we have the unit sales price in 2011 of 25 pesos and in 2012 is 24 pesos. So, we get the difference of 1. We will multiply it to the units sold in 2012, 4,000. So, we get the 4,000 sales price variance, which is unfavorable. Next, we will get the sales quantity variance. To get the sales quantity variance, just multiply the difference in the units sold in 2012 and 2011 by the unit sales price in 2012. So, we have the difference in the units sold of 400, multiply it to the unit sales price of 24 pesos. So, we get 10,000, which is favorable. So, we have the sales price variance and the sales quantity variance. So, we will get 6,000 favorable sales variances. So, now, let's proceed. We'll get the variable cost variances. To get the variable cost variances, just deduct the variable cost price variance and the variable cost quantity variance. So, to get the variable cost price variance, just multiply the difference in the unit variable cost in 2011 and 2012 by the units sold in 2012. So, we have the difference in the unit variable cost of 2 pesos, multiply it by the 4,000 units in 2012. So, we get the 8,000 favorable variable cost price variance. So, ito nang kuhaan ang variable cost quantity variance. So, just multiply the difference in the units sold in 2011 and 2012, which is 400, by the unit variable cost in 2011 of 15 pesos. So, 400 times 15 is equal to 6,000, which is unfavorable. So, now, 8,000 minus the 6,000 is equal to 2,000 favorable variable cost variances. So, now, we can easily get the net contribution margin variance. So, we have sales variances of 6,000, which is favorable. Ang atuang variable cost variances is 2,000 favorable, also favorable. So, atong net contribution margin variance is 8,000 favorable. So, we have another way in analyzing the sales variances because at times, data are not all available. The unit sales price, a unit cost price, and the unit sold may not be given on their absolute values but are given in terms of percentage change. So, to illustrate, to get the sales price variance, just deduct the sales this year and the applied sales this year. To get the sales this year, just multiply the quantity sold this year to the unit sales price this year. So, in applied sales this year, just multiply the quantity sold this year sa unit sales price last year. So, next, to get the quantity variance, just deduct the applied sales this year and the sales last year. To get the sales last year, just multiply the quantity sold last year sa unit sales price last year. The sales this year and the sales last year are normally available. So, ang item to be calculated is the amount of sales this year at unit sales price last year. So, to compute this amount, we have to know a sales variance ratio. A sales variance ratio given may be a sales price variance ratio or a sales quantity variance ratio. Say that the last year's unit sales price is 200 pesos and it increased by 40 this year, then the sales price variance ratio is 20%. Just divide the 40 pesos by the 200, so we get 20%. And here, the sales this year at sales price last year is calculated as follows. So, if the given is sales price variance ratio, sales this year at sales price last year is equal to sales this year, i-divide nato of 1 plus or minus the sales price variance ratio. But if the given is sales quantity variance ratio, sales this year at sales price last year is equal to sales last year times 1 plus or minus the sales quantity variance ratio. So we will go to the cost variances. We will use the cost this year at unit cost price last year, and the cost last year. To get the cost this year is equal to quantity sold this year times the unit cost price this year. The cost this year at unit cost price last year is equal to quantity sold this year times unit cost price last year. To get the cost last year, multiply the quantity sold last year sa unit cost price last year. So, if we will deduct the cost this year sa cost this year at unit cost price last year, we will get the cost price variance. And if we deduct cost this year at unit cost price last year by the cost last year, so we'll get the cost quantity variance. So, the cost this year and the cost last year are normally available. So, pareha ni siya sa sales this year and the sales last year. Normally available ra gyud siya, pero ang atong computon is the cost of goods sold this year at the unit sales price last year. To compute this amount, we have to know cost variance ratio. A cost variance ratio given may be a cost price variance ratio or a cost quantity variance ratio. So if the cost price variance ratio is given, to compute the cost this year at unit cost price last year, just divide the cost this year by 1 plus or minus the cost price variance ratio. So if you have given the cost quantity variance ratio, just multiply the cost last year by 1 plus or minus the cost quantity variance ratio. To illustrate the given formula, we have the Arabian Corporation decreased its sales price by 10% in 2012 as compared with 2011. So in the data, the gross profit is already provided. In 2011 of 600,000, and in 2012 we have 429,000. So we will now compute the gross profit variances. Since the sales price ratio is given, the computation rationally starts from the sales price variance, and is as much as the sales price variance ratio is given a 10% decrease, then the sales this year at unit sales price last year is equal to the sales this year divided to 90%, 100 minus 10, na decrease na to, so natay 90%. So 2,340,000 nga ato ang sales this year, divide of 90%, so naatay 2,600,000. So we have sales this year of 2,340,000. So ato siya i-deduct sa 2,600,000, nato sales price variance nga 260,000 unfavorable. So the sales quality variance is computed by getting the difference between the sales this year at unit sales price last year and the sales last year. So ato ang sales this year at unit sales price last year is 2,600,000. Deduct nato siya sa atong sales last year nga 2 million. So natay sales quantity variance nga 600,000 favorable. So, naman tayo sales quantity variance, makadetermine na ta sa sales quantity variance ratio. Sales quantity variance, divide nato sa sales last year. So, ato ang sales quantity variance is 600,000. I-divide nato sa atong sales last year, which is 2 million. So, natay sales quantity variance ratio nga 30% increase. So, ang ato ang sales quantity variance kay favorable siya, kaya ato ang quantity sold this year is greater than the quantity sold last year. Next, we'll get the cost price variance, in which the quantity variance ratio applies to both sales and cost of goods sold. Since the quantity variance ratio is determined to be 30% increase, then the cost quantity variance may now be computed. So, in the computation of cost quantity variance, the cost this year at unit cost last year is unknown. So, this will now be calculated as cost this year at unit cost price last year is equal to cost last year. Ato siyang i-multiply sa 130%. So, 1,400,000 multiply of 130%, this will give us 1,820,000 pesos. So, cost quantity variance will be now determined at 420,000. The cost price variance is computed at 1,911,000. Ito siyang i-deduct sa cost this year at unit cost price last year, which will now determine the 1,820,000. So naatay cost price variance na 91,000, which is unfavorable. After computing the cost price variance, the cost price variance ratio may now be calculated as follows. The cost price variance, 91,000. Ato siyang i-divide sa ato ang cost this year at unit cost price last year nga 1,820,000. So, natay cost price variance ratio nga 5%, which is unfavorable nga increase. Unfavorable cost price variance means that the cost price this year is greater than the cost price last year. As such, there is an increase in unit cost price. By using the sales price variance of 260,000, which is unfavorable, we can check the percentage change in sales price as follows. Sales price variance, 260,000, divide sa sales this year at unit sales price last year, which is 2,600,000, na atay sales price variance ratio nga 10% unfavorable. Unfavorable sales price variance indicates that the sales price this year decreases compared that of last year. So, to summarize, at naman tayo sales price variance ratio. To get this, just divide the sales price variance sa sales this year at unit sales price last year. And then sa sales quantity variance ratio, divide sales quantity variance sa sales last year. A cost price variance ratio, just divide the cost price variance sa cost this year at unit cost last year. So sa cost quantity variance ratio, divide cost quantity variance sa cost last year.
Let's discuss about multi-product gross profit variances. This is so useful, especially for companies who operate in a multi-product sales operations. In this case, the net quantity variance may be divided into sales mix variance and sales yield variance. The following variance computations constitute the accounting for gross profit variation. To illustrate the application of the formulas, let's consider this sample problem. Android Corporation sells 3 products, product A, B, and C. The sales, cost of goods sold, and gross profit of the 3 products in 2011 and 2012 are given below. Here in the table, observe the selling price per unit and the cost per unit. So the change in the gross profit variance to be analyzed is the gross profit this year of 140 less gross profit last year of 124,000 pesos. So there is an increase in the gross profit of 16,000 pesos. So the succeeding computations will verify whether the increase in the gross profit would be equal to what will be computed later. So first, the sales price variance. In product A, observe that the selling price per unit decreases by 2. So multiply it by 20,000 units sold this year so we can get 40,000 units, which is unfavorable. So next would be the product B. Look at the table. There is an increase in the selling price. Multiply it by the total units sold. So 22,000 units. So we can get 22,000, which is favorable. While in product C, there is an increase of 2 pesos so times 13,000 units sold, so we can get 26,000 pesos favorable. Negative 40,000 plus 22,000 plus 26,000, so we can get 8,000 pesos favorable. Next would be cost variance. So cost variance is equal to unit cost price times the quantity sold this year. In product A, there is a decrease in the cost. Multiply it with 20,000 units. So we can get a favorable amount of 20,000. Next would be in product B. So there is an increase in the cost. Multiply it with 22,000 units so we can get 44,000, which is unfavorable. Letter C, there is no increase in the cost per unit, which is 0 times 13,000 units, so 0. So negative 20,000 is the favorable since it talks about costs. Then add it with amount of 44,000. We can get a net cost price variance of 24,000. Now would be to compute the sales mix variance. So first, we have to solve for the gross profit this year at gross profit last year. In product A, we sold 20,000 units, multiply it with 3. So we get 3 pesos by deducting the selling price per unit less the cost per unit under 2011. We can get 60,000 units. So in product B, so 44,000 pesos. So in product C, there are 13,000 units sold. Multiply it with for a product of 52,000 pesos. So the total gross profit this year at unit gross profit last year would be 156,000 pesos. So now let's deduct for the gross profit this year at average unit gross profit last year. So we get it by multiplying the number of units sold this year. So multiply it with 2.69565 pesos. We get it by dividing the gross profit last year of 124 with the total units sold last year. So we get 2.69565. So by multiplying 55,000 units times 2.69565, so we can get 148,261 pesos. So by subtracting it from the amount of 156,000 is the gross profit this year at unit gross profit last year, so we can get 7,739, which is favorable. So next would be to solve for the sales yield variance. So in order to get that one, we have to use the gross profit this year at average unit gross profit last year. So we will just get or extract the amount of 148,261 as what we have computed before this slide. Then deduct the gross profit last year of 124,000. We can get an amount of 24,261 favorable. So now we can compute for the net gross profit variance in order to compare it with what we have computed in my first bullet by adding or subtracting the amount which we got in solving the sales price variance of 8,000 less the cost price variance of 24,000, add the sales mix variance of 7,739, then add the net sales yield variance of 24,261 pesos favorable. So add since it is favorable. So we can get net gross profit variance of 16,000. So therefore, we can conclude that what we have computed here and at my first bullet of 60,000 pesos favorable coincides with what we have computed here.
There is also an alternative way in computing the sales mix variance and the sales yield variance. So first we have the sales mix variance. So as you can see in the table, so there are 6 columns. So in column A determines a product. In column B, the actual quantity sold. In column C, the actual quantity sold at standard sales mix. In column D, the mix variance, either favorable or unfavorable. In column E, the unit gross profit last year. And in column F, the mix variance in pesos, either favorable or unfavorable. Now, in column A determines 3 products. So product A, B, and C. Column B determines the actual quantity sold of each product. So in product A, the actual quantity sold is 20,000. In product B, 22,000. And in product C, 13,000. So a total of 55,000. Column C determines the actual quantity sold at standard sales mix. In product A, 55,000 times 8 over 46. So we get 9,565. We get this by multiplying the total units sold in 2012, which is 55,000 in units. You can also see that in column B, the total actual quantity sold times 8 over 46. Now that 8 over 46 is based on the standard sales mix last year. In product A, the standard sales mix last year is 8,000 divided by 46,000. That 46,000 is the total standard sales mix last year. So 55,000 times 8,000 or 8 divide 46, so we get 9,565 in product A. In product B, so same with product A, we'll multiply the total units sold, which is 55,000 times 26 over 46. So we get 31,087. And in product C, 55,000 times 12 over 46. So we get 14,348. Now in column D, determines the mix variance. So we get this by subtracting the actual quantity sold in column B and the actual quantity sold standard sales mix in column C. Now in mix variance, if the actual quantity sold is greater than the actual quantity sold standard sales mix, which gives a positive result, so the mix variance is favorable variance. But if the actual quantity sold is lower than the actual quantity sold at standard sales mix, which gives a negative result, the mix variance is said to be unfavorable variance. So in product A, the actual quantity sold is 20,000 minus 9,565. That gives a positive result of 10,435. So the mix variance is favorable variance. In product B, the actual quantity sold is 22,000 minus 31,087, which gives a negative result of 9,087. So the mixed variance is unfavorable variance. In product C, 13,000 minus 14,348, which gives a negative result of 1,348. So the mixed variance is unfavorable variance. Now in column E, the unit gross profit last year, we get this by subtracting the unit sales price and the unit cost last year. Now in product A, the unit gross profit last year is 3 pesos. In product B, 2 pesos. And product C, 4 pesos. Now the last column, which is the mixed variance in pesos, we get this by multiplying the mixed variance in column D and the unit gross profit last year in column E. Product A, 10,435 times 3, so we get the mixed variance in pesos in product A of 31,305, which is favorable. In product B, 9,087 times 2, so we get 18,174, unfavorable. And in product C, 1,348 times 4, so we get 5,392, unfavorable. So in product A, 31,305 minus 18,174 in product B, and in product C, 5,392. So we get the net sales mix variance of 7,739 favorable. So that is how we compute the sales mix variance. Next, we go to the sales yield variance. Now, the sales yield variance may be alternatively computed as follows. So, the quantity sold this year, which is 55,000 units, minus the quantity sold last year, which is 46,000 units. So, the yield variance in unit is equals to 9,000, which is favorable. So, it is favorable because the quantity sold this year is greater than the quantity sold last year. So the yield variance in units, which is 9,000, multiplied by the average unit gross profit last year of 2.69565. So we get the yield variance in pesos of 24,261 favorable. Now the sum of the sales mix variance and the sales yield variance is the net quantity variance. Now the quantity variance is equals to the change in quantity times the unit gross profit rate last year. Now, how do we get the changes in quantity of each product? So, we compute this by the units of this year, which is 20,000 of product A minus 8,000 units last year. So, we get the changes in quantity of product A of 12,000 units, which is favorable. In product B, 22,000 units this year minus 26,000 units last year. So, we get negative 4,000, which is unfavorable. And in product C, 13,000 units minus 12,000 units, so we get 1,000 favorable. Now we can compute the quantity variance. In product A, the changes in quantity, which is 12,000 times 3, so we get 36,000, which is favorable. That is the quantity variance. In product B, negative 4,000 times 2, so we get negative 8,000, which is unfavorable in product B. In product C, 1,000, which is favorable, times 4, so we get 4,000 favorable in product C. So 36,000 in product A minus 8,000 in product B plus 4,000 in product C. So we get the net quantity variance of 32,000. So to check if the net quantity variance is the same, if we add the sales mix variance and the sales yield variance, we have the sales mix variance of 7,739. You can see this in the table. And the sales yield variance, so 24,261. The sum of these two will result to a net quantity variance of 32,000, which is actually the same in getting the quantity variance or net quantity variance, which is 32,000. So those are the alternative ways in computing the sales mix variance and the sales yield variance.